Hello and welcome to a new edition of True Audio Files. Today, as you saw in the title, I am going to be doing my sound quality shootout for Van Halen II, which just got released as a one-step from Mobile Fidelity. And here is my copy of it. For those of you, I had a couple of comments asking me, or one comment actually asking me how I've listened to it, if it's still sealed. I just happen to have this one in shrink wrap just so people know. As you can see, I can open it up and there they are. But I have got number 1483. And been looking forward to this one quite a bit. And I'm just really a big Van Halen fan, and I've been really looking forward to all of these getting released as one-steps. So I thought the first Van Halen's album was very well done. I thought it probably was my best sounding copy. I was really looking forward to this one. I don't have as many copies of Van Halen 2 or any of the more recent reissues of it anyways, and they really didn't get the audiophile treatment like the first Van Halen did, as it was released as a DCC, where Steve Hoffman did the mastering of that one. And also Chris Bellman also has done one recently, and I know that he redid Van Halen too. So, we'll see. I should probably look into getting that one because I do like this album. It's actually my first Van Halen album that I ever bought back probably in 1979 or 1980. So it's got a special place in my heart. So that being said, I want to show you the other versions of Van Halen 2 that I have that I did a sound quality shootout with. I probably have my original copy, but it's probably in such rough shape that I don't want to touch it and try listening to it because it probably would sound really bad. But I did find probably 10 years ago or so, I found the jack is a little beat up, but an early pressing. It's certainly probably close to a first pressing. I don't know if it's an actual first pressing, but it's certainly an early pressing. There's no barcode on the back, so that leads me to believe it was probably released, 79, 80. So it most likely is an early pressing of it. And then I also have an early pressing that is Japanese pressing that I got back probably 6-7 years ago. Got it for a relatively reasonable price from a place that sadly is no longer around. But anyway, and this was one that I just have really always enjoyed, this version of it. So, but I've never really done an actual shootout between that one and the early pressing, and so this was a great opportunity to do that as well. So, kind of a little bit of a background on what I do for those of you who haven't watched any of my videos before is I will basically listen to the new release that came out, in this case, the one step, all the way through to try to figure out what song I think is going to be the best song to do an A-B comparison on. And in this particular case, I decided on Beautiful Girls, the last song on the album. And I'll explain why I specifically chose that song other than some others that I thought probably would have been a better choice a little bit later. So, so first off, we'll go on and talk about the one step. I listened to the one step all the way through. I thought it sounded very good. I thought, maybe a hair too much. Well, too much is I don't like. I try to be as objective as possible. It's definitely more treble than maybe it needed. But anyways, there's definitely a lot of treble. It had a good amount of bass. I wouldn't say a lot of bass, but definitely a good amount of bass. You could feel it. And overall, I thought it had a great sound quality to it. I will say, however, there were a couple of places throughout the record, probably 2, maybe 3 spots, where I got sibilance. And it wasn't super bad until I got to the song Light Up the Sky, which is one of my favorite songs, and the song that I really wanted to do as a sound quality shootout. And I sort of kind of did later, but I didn't use that because on my one step, the sibilance was really bad to the point where it really was distorted and really made it difficult to listen to in the one section. And it's only got that sibilance in one section of the song, and that's in kind of the drum interlude, sort of in the middle of the song. There's like a guitar solo, and then there's kind of a drum interlude before it pumps back up again. And in that spot, there's some hi-hat playing on there that is really distorted on the one step. And I've done an A-B comparison, ABC comparison in this case, with the Japanese and the early pressing, US early pressing, and it did not have that issue at all. It was very clear and very clean. So no distortion, no sibilance at all. So the one thing I will also say about this, or all of them, is that the one step was definitely cut louder, pretty significantly louder than the other two. The other two were pretty similar in terms of how loud they were cut. So that also may play into the issues that I was having with the sibilance / distortion, is that it was cut at a much louder volume. So the one step was also cut at 45 RPM, so it spread across 2 records too to help. And that usually, the 45 RPM thing usually cuts down on sibilance and distortion and things like that, but it didn't on my turntable. So anyway, that being said, basically you take away those 2 or 3 spots where there's sibilance. I really liked the way this one sounded. I thought it had a great 3D feel to it. You could really place where the instruments were in space, and they had good air, if you will, around them, air. And just thought it sounded great. The soundstage was pretty good, pretty wide. And this is by no means an audiophile recording, so you're not going to get an audiophile sound quality out of this, so that should not be the expectation here by any stretch. I also want to stress about the sibilance that, maybe it's my system, and it's certainly possible, although I will say that I rarely ever get sibilance. The only times I've seemed to have gotten sibilance lately, which is sort of kind of odd, is the more recent Mobile Fidelities. I would say 75% of them I tend to get some sibilance on. Some are worse than others, but it's been kind of a frustration because I felt that those albums definitely sounded amazing, and in many cases had the best sound of any of the versions I've had besides that sibilance. So again, could be my setup. I do have a couple of other turntables that I'm going to want to try this specific copy of Van Halen II on to see if I can mimic that same distortion. It's possible I won't, because they do have different cartridges. I have a 2M black LVB on my Rega RP6, and maybe it's because of the super fine needle stylus that's on that, and I don't have that kind of a stylus on the other turntables, so maybe it's just because it's going so deep into the groove that it's causing that. I don't know, but I can try to report back on that if I end up doing that. So anyways, overall, take that sibilance out. I thought it sounded spectacular. Maybe could have used a little bit less treble, maybe. If I had to nitpick, maybe a little bit more warmth / mid-range to it. Because one of the other things I will tell you is I put on the Japanese pressing next, and I thought it sounded really good. Definitely had less treble, had a little bit less bass, but I thought the clarity was still great, still good. The soundstage was still the same width, if you will, as the one step. Didn't quite have that 3D space that the one step did, that the Mofi seemed to get really well and do really well, but still had a good placement for all of the instruments and vocals. The lead vocal was always in the center. The backing vocals were just a slight bit off to the right. The lead guitar, or I should say guitar, because most of the time it was just one guitar, was off to my left. And Light Up the Sky, they had a guitar solo that was on the right side. That was part of the reason why I wanted to use that as a demo. So anyways, I thought the sound quality was pretty good on that. Not quite at the level of the Mofi, but it didn't have the sibilance. And the pressing was nearly as good as the one step. It definitely was very quiet. I actually think of it, it's probably nearly identical in terms of the pressing quality, but it's an old Japanese pressing, so you should expect that. So, and I think that speaks volumes to the super vinyl. I thought the super vinyl was definitely at least as quiet as the Japanese pressing. So then I put on the early US pressing. My early US pressing is probably a VG plus. There's some hairline scratches and nicks and stuff like that, but nothing that is all that bad. And you could tell when I played it. It definitely sounded really good. There were definitely some nicks, ticks, and pops every once in a while, but overall it was pretty good. It definitely had more surface noise than the other two, but that would be to be expected, just because those two vinyl formulations are known for being much quieter. So it was to be expected. So definitely had more surface noise. Certainly not a ton of surface noise. And one of the things that stood out to me though on the US pressing is it definitely had, I want to say it's more treble, but it's probably a little bit more upper mid-range, maybe lower treble to it, where that made the guitar stand out a little bit more, the cymbals stand out a little bit more than they did on the Japanese pressing. I would say, the Japanese pressing had a little bit more warmth because I think the lower mid-range was more evident there. Definitely gave it a little bit more of a warmth sound to it. The early US pressing definitely had a little bit more of the upper mid-range, lower treble to kind of give you that edginess to the guitar and maybe a little bit more noticeability of the cymbals that are in there. But I would say from a soundstage standpoint, from the width, the depth, the 3D-ness to it, the Japanese and the US were nearly identical. So, if you like that warmth sound, I would think that you probably would lean more towards the Japanese, and especially if you want that quieter vinyl. And if you want that little bit more of that edginess, which you tend to want in a Van Halen, I would think, you probably want to step more towards that US pressing. So, and if you can find a super clean copy of it, even better. So, my take is this. Now, this part of this is subjective and, just my personal preferences and opinion. I think they're all very, very good. I would say that if you could take that sibilance out of the one step, it would be the winner for me. Probably a little bit more high end than I tend to like, even though I like a lot of high end. Probably could have used a little bit less, but I think from the soundstage aspect of it, the bass aspect of it, and it was definitely better than the other two. However, you can't take that sibilance out, or at least not on my system that I've got in my listening room. So what I would say then is, the Japanese pressing and the US pressing are super close. I would probably, if you can take all the nicks and the ticks and pops and the surface noise out of the early US pressing, it would probably give me the edge. So, but not by much, because there's something to be said for that super quiet vinyl. So, makes me want to think about getting that Chris Bellman cut Van Halen II that's probably out there still and see what that one sounds like, because that could potentially be my favorite one if I can find a copy of it and listen to it. But I guess that's my take. If you could take the sibilance out of the one step, it would be my favorite. I wouldn't say my clear favorite, but definitely my favorite. US pressing number 2, and the Japanese pressing a super close third, but all three sound really good. I guess it's just a question of what you're looking for and whether or not you're going to get that sibilance on your system for the one step. I've already talked to a couple friends of mine who did not notice that sibilance when they were listening to it, so maybe it's just my turntable. So anyway, that is everything I have for this week. Do you have any other versions of Van Halen 2 that you feel are superior to these? I would really like to hear your thoughts, especially if you've done any kind of A/B comparisons of that copy that's your favorite to, let's say, the one step and the early US pressing and things like that. So love to hear it. So please comment on that if you have. So if you liked what you saw here, hit that like button. I want to thank you if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, please do so. I would love to see some more subscribers. And hit that alert bell, let you know when my new videos come out. That's everything I have for this video. I want to thank you very much for watching. I want you to have yourself a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thanks.